Ron Hart is a syndicated columnist whose writings you can find in newspapers all over America, as well as online at the Daily Caller. He says that after this past week's disastrous pullout from Afghanistan, at least we can rest easy knowing the Taliban now have the United States military's diversity training and critical race theory materials that we left behind. And you know they're going to follow them. They also have our Black Hawk helicopters, but more importantly, they've got many copies of White Fragility. Would you please welcome back to the show one of our very favorites, columnist Ron Hart. Ron, it's great having you back. You've been kind of fired up because I read your stuff all the time and love it. Got any opinions on Afghanistan this week, much?
Thought it went well, and I thought it went well. I mean, it was a mess. The good news is actually they're getting Americans out of there pretty easily right now. It's $2,000 they're charging them to fly out of Afghanistan. $3,000 if you want to be inside the plane. So making a big. But Schumer and Pelosi, they was embarrassed at first about Biden being in Delaware during this thing. The GOP was mad he's in Delaware. The Democrats were mad that he would vacation in Delaware. I can't believe that. But they're mad at him that way. So, but Pelosi and Schumer have also assured all Americans trapped in Afghanistan that they will get a mail-in ballot by November. So that's all.
That one is too true to be funny.
It may be true. It may be a joke. I'm not sure.
It has been a tough week. I think humor is about the only way that we can kind of cope with some of the things that we've seen because it's been hurtful as an American to see this stuff. It's
terribly embarrassing. The Taliban pulls into Kabul. They're going eating ice cream. They're playing bumper cars. They got a better work-balance, relationship than I have. I mean, they're just enjoying themselves there. It's just embarrassing. They did the fake Iwo Jima flag. And they're in our face in a tremendous way. But, it's got to be scary. You got a regime that makes women cover their face. Kids can't go to school. They stifle free speech. And that's just the Biden administration. That's the Taliban's even worse than told. I mean, I don't know.
We talked about earlier in my monologue that, they've already killed a comedian and a singer because they banned both comedy and music. Ron, if you were there, you wouldn't have a shot, man. I mean, just telling you.
Started out to have a shot here in America. But you have to respect the Taliban. They fought back. They've been invited to play in the SEC. They beat Great Britain, in a war. They beat Russia.
Yeah.
And they beat us. So the SEC invited me in just on strength of schedule. They're pretty strong. But
speaking of SEC, football is kind of back this fall for the first time in a couple of years.
Yeah, I love football. I'm glad it's here. It'll be a welcome relief to what's going on.
Are we going to see a return to free speech in this country? I was very proud of all people, Bill Maher, a very liberal comedian, but he took on the left in a way that I've not seen anyone else do it.
Sure.
And was very bold in expressing the fact that if we cannot accept the exceptionalism of America and how good a country we are,
right,
there's something really wrong with us.
It's good to see it. He does it every now and then. You have to hand it to Bill Maher. He does it on occasion, and he's also scared of the cancel culture for what he does.
Sure.
But he's a committed leftist, but he understands the value of free speech. There was a time the left wing of the party really valued free speech. That was a big part of what they did.
Yeah.
Now they crush it on campus. I think like 40% of students believe free speech should not be allowed, and the other 55% think the government should pay for it. It's a crazy world in which we live in. Colleges today are crazy. It's not the place you and I used to know.
Well, when you and I were in college, the campuses were the place where people pushed for, demanded free speech, and if they did anything, it would be to take over the president's office so that they could have more free expression.
Right.
I'm just stunned. Where did this whole cancel culture and stifle people's opinions you don't agree with? Yeah. How'd that happen to us?
Well, it's a communist tenet of the Communist Party. You stifle any form of free speech that's against what you believe. And the fact that the Taliban killed a comedian, comedy is the most powerful way to make them act right. If you make fun of them, and they hate it, by the way. I mean, I get email. So, and no one does it from the right, hardly. Fortunately, what I do, there's very few people in my space because most of your comedians, most of your late night comedians are way left. The writers are McCarthy-era leftists that were part of the communist line. All the writers in New York are left-wing liberals, right? So every joke for the last 4 years, Trump is fat, Trump is orange. No humor, it's gone.
Yeah.
The biggest, I guess, casualty of the Trump administration, I think, is humor, because there's no one really funny anymore. And the right-wing humor is really, you got Biden, who's a buffoon, and you got so many things to make fun of from the right looking at the left. If you're willing to do it, and your house is paid for, you don't need the job.
That's a good point to make. I think the biggest frustration, though, is that we're living in a time when the left-wing comics, it used to be the comics were funny. You could watch late night, they could make fun of everybody. These guys aren't funny. They're angry, and they're mad, and they're vicious. And if it was funny, I could go with some of that.
There's some funny stuff that used to say, Carson Leno was balanced, I think,
very much,
to some degree.
Yeah.
And these late night people right now, they're just angry and they're not funny, and they've just, I don't know what, it's just vitriol all night long. It's not even good. And they don't make fun of Biden either.
No.
I mean, he's just a perfect candidate for to make fun of, and they just don't touch him.
Well, I'm glad that you're willing to, and we're always happy to have you here, and hope to see you regularly.
And for the record, my death next week is not an accident.
That's good to know. We will report it that way. You can find Ron's columns online at dailycaller.com. You can follow Ron on social media at Ronald Hart.